Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Today I'm sitting under the arbor in our flower garden area behind the house. And I just want to talk about this gorgeous set of garden beds we have here, our more formal flower beds. And you can see it was so humid the last week of curly hair, and it's just like you put your finger in a light socket. Usually my hair is a little bit less fuzzy, but I just don't care. Let's grab a cup of coffee, and I want to tell you all about the story of these gorgeous garden beds that we have here, where they've been and where we're going. We moved here about 4 years ago. It was our dream property. It had everything that we'd hoped for. It kind of dawned on us when we were looking at the land. We're like, wait a second. Little by little, it kind of occurred to us that all these different things we had wanted to do on land that we would find eventually at our home with gardens, like we could do it here. Like things were really possible here. And it has been just a joy. It has been a ton of work, but work that we really wanted to do. So when we came here, these gardens were all overgrown. Weeds that were just sky high. I mean, we're talking weeds that are at least 4 feet tall. I saw the potential. I slowly started to work on peeling back the layers of weed turf. I call it weed turf because it was just this thick layer of weeds that had grown. And I'm guessing, from what I can piece together, at least probably like 7 to 10 years worth of weed growth that had built up all over. And my rough estimation is the footprint of these flower beds is probably at least 1,000 square feet. If I were to add it all together, it probably makes up like a standard floor of a home. That was my rough way to kind of wrap my mind around like just how big is this. So it's a lot of garden space. And as I started to peel it back, you could see the outline. You could see where the curves were and where the previous gardener 2 owners ago had very carefully mapped this garden bed that is just absolutely beautiful, symmetrical and some asymmetrical lines, sculpted curves. They built this arbor. They built this very charming shed with the door, and they laid down the paver circle. Like things were done by hand with such care, and it became very evident to me like, wow, somebody poured so much love into this space. Somebody with a vision and a beautiful eye for design, which I relate to because that's totally my jam as well. Really created this with love. It wasn't just some standard thing. It wasn't just thrown in. And it was such an honor because I said to my husband, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I am determined to restore the garden beds. I am determined to peel back the layers of weeds and find out what's under here. What's still in here that we can preserve and keep? How can we make this our own? And then frankly, throughout that process, like in a way, I looked at it as like earning our right to then garden it and own it and make it our own. It would have been the summer of 2020, and the pandemic had hit at that point, when I started it was back in April, and literally would take my weasel tool and put it in the ground and pull back, put it in the ground and pull back these rectangular lines, these rows of chunks of turf. And so just getting in there, pulling the weed turf back, and then I would get down on my knees and would pull with the claw tool, yank back these pieces of turf just to start to pull strips off, expose the soil, rustle it up, to start to create a clean bed. And so most mornings, I would get up right around dawn. I would get out here and work as much as I could before I had my day job and go to work. And it was a wonderful workout. You get your workout in, you're doing all this high impact, pulling and you're squatting and all this stuff. It's kind of like doing yoga and maybe weightlifting too. It was great. It was wonderful. I felt so good, and then I go in, shower off, hop online because I had the awesome blessing to be, working from home. So great. And then just row by row, line by line, started peeling this whole section back. And as we were getting established here, because this is our first time living on acreage, we've got 10 acres, we did then invest in a tractor. And that really helped because, at a certain point, it's like physically, how long am I going to be manually digging and pulling this stuff up? So when we got over to the part over by the house here, which I would say is about, I was at about a third, 30% through the work. Then we were able to bring in the big guns, bring in the tractor, have the loader bucket with the teeth come in and start to rustle up a lot of that weed turf. I wanted to give you an update of our garden rehab project about halfway through the summer here. So this whole area I dug up by hand all the way back to those rocks there. And we just got a small, a subcompact tractor, a John Deere, to help us pull up some of this stuff. So it's gotten a little easier. I don't have to pull all of the turf up by hand. There's still a lot of manual work to do, but at least it can kind of like under dig and like back pull dig the turf. So this is a debris pile from that, cleaned up to here. And then over here you can see we've been digging with the tractor, and then I've been clearing up to the house and pulling turf away, excuse the hose. And I got to here this morning, and this whole other area here just was dug up by the tractor, so I have to go through and clean it up and edge it off. And then over here I did put down cardboard just to kind of stall out some of the really aggressive weed growth. The weeds get like 4 feet tall, and this whole area hasn't been done yet. That'll need to get weeded out. This really cool circle paver, like paver circle, whatever you want to call it, we just started digging it up with the tractor. So you can see we've started to expose some really cool former landscaping here, like this slab that aligns with the path across the circle here. You can see we've exposed some of the edge of the circle. So this all has to come up. It's part of the next step. And then last but not least, this area we haven't even gotten to. We'll have to dig out all the weeds. We worked our way around, and by the time the snow hit that fall, we had finally gotten it all pulled off. And so that was such an accomplishment. It took the entire season to get it all cleaned up, all rustled up. And then I remember I bought a little tiller and was tilling it just to get the soil turned over. Really, really great soil. And then have it ready to start planting the next season. And I'll never forget the moment when it was done. I was like, hooray! And I was doing my best to capture this story on Instagram. So if you're not following me, go check out Mossongland Farm on Instagram. You can see some old pictures back in 2020 of that whole journey. It was just very, very exciting. We had some people, friends and family following it, and they were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, you're able to get that done. It felt like such an accomplishment, and it was so rewarding and such like instant gratification to see the weeds come off, to see the soil so clean and beautiful, and then you start to get inspired about the possibilities. You're like, this is a blank canvas, and it is stunning. It is this stunning outline, the stunning shape that we were able to recover. there's some roses and irises and bee balm that were still in the ground, and I found a peony, like just a couple things that were still left over that didn't get taken over by weeds, so we preserved them. Very, very special legacy plants from the past owners, so that was very neat. And they have thrived since we have restored the beds. Now they're getting bigger, they're multiplying, and so it's, I kind of think, well, gosh, they must be happy. They must love, what we've done. We've created space for them. They don't have the weeds competing with them anymore. So it's wonderful. And I started to add, our own things to the garden. You start to make it your own story. So we had the heirloom peony from Grandma, and planted that in the ground that first fall, so that it started to have a place to be. And just started to brainstorm ideas, like, what are we going to do? What do we want to put in the ground? You take off that much weed turf, I mean, you definitely run the risk of having a lot of weeds come back, because the seeds are in the soil. They have been thriving for years and years and years, and there's no reason that they wouldn't just crop right back up. And we've done all this work, an entire season's worth of work, to take them off. It's like, oh my gosh, what's our defense plan here? So I did some reading, figured out the newspaper method, where you put down at least 2 layers of newspaper and then you mulch on top, was a really good biodegradable, friendly way to manage that, and it looked beautiful. We put that in, and I'm really, really happy. I would say, if you're looking for a way to start establishing a bed and you want to mulch, that is a really good method. And you could also use cardboard too, if that works for you. Just put the cardboard down and then the mulch on top. For this type of bed, where I needed a lot of flexibility to like dig holes, put plants in, move plants around, I didn't want to do cardboard. Cardboard feels a little more permanent. I like cardboard for more of a landscaping sort of a approach. Like if you're going to put a bunch of hostas in a bed and you're not going to move things around much, then that's a great approach to keep the weed pressure down. So then fast forward to now, we're in 2023, and I am really proud of all of the work that I've been able to invest in these flower beds. So since we cleared everything in 2020, these flower beds are basically on their third season only. So it is a relatively new garden. And I get impatient. I just want things to be full and beautiful and lush and have this amazing design with depth and interest and different heights and colors and things popping at all times of the season. Like, I want it now. I don't want to have to wait. And the tough thing when you're a gardener, or a farmer too, is you only have one time a year, one shot a year, so you want to make it the most of it, and then you got to wait to come around to do things. I wish you could just keep on gardening every month of the year round, and get even further faster, but that's not the way nature works. I've incorporated a lot of different textures and colors, and I've learned so much throughout the process, what works, what doesn't. That's the wonderful thing about gardening. There's always things to learn. There's so many variables that go into whether a plant is happy or not. And I truly am becoming a huge perennial enthusiast at this point. So if you have tips or ideas or things you want to share, please add a comment below about perennial gardening, because I'm trying to really learn, invest more. We're in Minnesota 4B, that zone, and my goal is to make these flower beds and any of the other landscaping and flower beds that we have around here as beautiful and dramatic as possible. And I am determined that there is a way to achieve a very elevated design with a lot of color, a lot of interest throughout the season with perennials alone. That is the challenge I'm giving myself now. So when I think about where I want to take this garden, where I want to take these flower beds in the future, I am aggressively pushing myself to find creative ways to have dramatic color and interest throughout the season. Frankly, I find a lot of perennial gardens that I see out there, whether it's landscaping or other, at businesses or other places, I find them to be quite boring, to be honest. I think they're uninspiring. I think There are so many plants that are common, that are very standard in our area, and that's probably true in a lot of zones, across the country, or across the world, where there's go-tos, right? Like here, it's like hostas and hydrangeas and lilies, and I'm not making fun of those plants. I'm not putting them down. They're beautiful. They have their place. I love having them in the garden, but I think there is such an untapped potential of really, really interesting, exotic, dare I say, opportunities out there if we can push ourselves to get more creative as not just gardeners, but designers. And I am huge into design. It's not just about growing things for me. It's about designing an environment that is of the utmost beauty. I'm always trying to achieve this pinnacle of extreme beauty, because it soothes my soul, it brings me so much peace and joy, and I feel like it can be true art. And I'm an artist deep down. I find designing with garden elements to be one of the most satisfying types of art that I've ever done. And I love everything about it. It's so wonderful. And I keep researching and discovering and learning about all these new perennials I didn't know about. This last season, I never knew what Cardinal Flower was. It's this gorgeous red perennial that gets tall and kind of gangly and has striking crimson red blooms on it. And it's native. It's completely native. It's a perennial that will come back and come back and come back, and the pollinators love it. It is striking, and that's the type of stuff that I'm most interested in. It's not as common, it's unexpected in the design. It should work hard because it's from this zone. Why not incorporate that into my perennial garden beds for this amazing pop of color? And then why not have other things like lobelia? There's that blue lobelia that is a perennial too. You don't see those very often. Why not get creative with the Flagpole Garden that we have here and challenge myself to do the color palette that I want, red, white, and blue, but do it in a way that's really interesting, like blue salvia, red bee balm, like the striking real scarlet red bee balm, and then I have white candy tuft, which is a new native to me, like new thing I just learned about this year, that would be a perfect border plant on the outside. And then again, it comes back every year. That's the beauty of perennials. They come back every year. They're low maintenance. I don't have to replant. I've learned I don't particularly enjoy planting plants because it is a lot of work. And at a certain point, I just get annoyed. The thing about perennials that I love so much is they come back every year, low maintenance. They generally should do really good in our zone because they are home to this zone. So they should work hard, and it's not as difficult to take care of them, not as fussy. And then they get bigger and you can split and they multiply every year. So why not invest in that, especially when we have large garden beds? We keep making them because I'm obsessed. And that scale and volume. And for me at this point in my gardening journey, I keep learning and growing and evolving as a gardener. It's just this insatiable passion that I have. I am craving volume. I'm craving a lot of impact. I'm craving not just one or two little flowers or bushes or plants here and there, but a lot of wow factor. Because I need that for a garden bed to really like grab my attention and make me get excited, much like a piece of art. It should just be very, very overwhelmingly stunning. That's my goal. That's what I'm trying to achieve, is just unexpectedly overwhelmingly stunning. My goal with the color palette and the design is to get more primary colors, and so no more pink. I really, really don't like the color pink. I've always not liked the color pink, and I've inherited flowers from people or other, flowers have just shown up in my life. Like even some of the seeds I grew this spring, they were supposed to be blue and they turned out pink. Or pink will show up in a mix of seed that you put in the ground and it's like, oh, there's pink. Pink just finds me. But I'm not a huge fan, and after having pink in the gardens here for 3 years now, it just doesn't do anything for me. it's like whatever. So I'll leave what I have. I'm not going to pull plants out because I'm still happy to have them, but I am deliberately not investing in pink in the future because it just does not excite me. I want things that excite me and that I think are beautiful and that I love. So my palette that I'm going for is primary, meaning reds, blues, maybe a little bit of purple, white, orange, yellow, like those type of, like, if you think about like the standard crayons in a crayon box, you think about primary colors, you know, in like Legos and playing blocks as a child, that type of color palette, and having it just be popping with color throughout the season as much as possible. And so I'm getting there. I'm not where I want to be. And, you know, a garden is always a work in progress. It's never perfect. So I'm always looking for tips of really great perennials that are striking and interesting and hardworking. If you have any ideas or things that have worked for you or things to watch out for, let me know. You know, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. I'm always open to ideas. I'm always trying to learn from other people and get inspired from other gardeners. So thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time.